Hold on, everyone. This is about to get mythical. Hello, everyone. Bront CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we are talking about the mythical champion, Androc the Glorious. Now, if you've followed some of my videos before, you saw that I pulled Androc and Mezamel in a video on my alt, and I figured I would give a chance to dive into a little bit where I'm going to be using these champions, but specifically this video is going to focus on Androc. I'll certainly put another one out for Mezamel sometime later. Androc is an amazing champion. Let's go over his kit quickly here. He's got an A1 that does increased defense on all allies for 1 turn. It's only a single hitter. It can do some okay damage. I didn't put a book in it. Not a big deal. Very good to have that increased defense, however. He's got an A2 here that increases the duration of all ally buffs in addition to attacking all enemies, and heal all allies by 4% of their max HP for every buff on them that had its duration increased. Now, he puts out at least 3 buffs himself, possibly 4 with that A1, so that is 16% of their max HP healed every time this increases. And of course, if you have other buffers, there could be quite a few more buffs on there. This is a pretty chunky heal. And then he provides an increased resistance, strengthen, and continuous heal buff, and adds an additional continuous heal if they're less than 50% HP. So in addition to that, as we mentioned, 16% heal, possibly 20 even with the extra continuous heal, he does a bunch of extra healing with the continuous heal buffs. Now, I got fairly lucky that I booked 4 of the 5 books that you would need to book him fully in this form, went into his A2 and A3, so I got all of my cooldowns reduced. That's been wonderful. And I also picked him up with Nourish. Nourish here increases the value of continuous heal buffs, and continuous heal buffs will restore a portion of destroyed max HP. I plan on using him in Hydra, which is why I thought Nourish would be very interesting. I'm still trying to figure out if that's the best blessing for him, but I think that plays in very well with just the 1 star, and since it's just 1 star, it's not a big deal. Unfortunately, it's only about 5% of the heal, so it's not a huge heal, but it can certainly add up over time in Hydra. Finally, his passive, which is, I think, what's going to make him really good in Hydra, increases his resistance by 10 for each buff on each ally. It's not great, but you know what? If there are 40 buffs out there, that's 400 extra resistance. So that's a lot of extra resistance. I don't know if you're going to get 40 buffs. Maybe 20 might be a little more realistic, but still 200 extra resistance. Not too bad. That means that if you've got even some reasonable amount of resistance in him, he might get enough resistance to resist in Hydra. It also means if you're going to use him in PvP, this resistance will buff a little bit more, so he might blow off some of your mid accuracy or hybrid accuracy champions as far as, remove buffs or anything like that. Finally, critical hits inflicted by allies increase the turn meters of all allies by 5%, and it occurs once per spill. This is a very Molly Tankard-esque passive. Basically, you put them on teams with other people that are constantly critical hitting, and you're getting a bunch of extra turn meter. Now, if you're getting a bunch of counterattacks from like a Shamael, for example, Shamael is only going to do it once per skill, but he's constantly counterattacking anyway, so suddenly you're going to get a bunch of extra turn meters, so he's going to work really well with Shamael, for example. I think that should be a lot of fun. So when we go into his other form here, which I don't think is really going to be very Hydra-focused, but I think this is actually going to be interesting for PvP. He's got an A1 that is decreased defense, so you need some accuracy on him for this form, which is kind of unfortunate. You need accuracy only in one of the 2 forms. He's got an AoE that does decrease resistance, weaken, and enfeeble. The enfeeble is great because that's going to force the weak hits, and I think that's going to be where he's going to be really useful in PvP. The big problem with this is if you can build him with a bunch of accuracy, you have to sacrifice some other stats, and you don't need the accuracy in the other form, so how are you going to build him? And I can address that in a little bit. Finally, he's got this here, the block buffs. Removes buffs from enemies, places block buffs. This actually could be useful in Hydra as well. The block buffs is always useful in Hydra. The remove buffs could be useful, but ideally you're not letting Hydra get buffed. And then it deals some damage, which is pure damage, 5% based off of how many buffs were removed. The problem that this skill has, and really why people like Big Papa Drock have actually called for a buff, and I think he probably does need a slight buff from a mythical standpoint. He's still a very good champion. I'm enjoying using him so far. But this, if it doesn't remove buffs, doesn't do damage. And so in Hydra, since you generally aim for Hydra to not have buffs on there, he doesn't do as much damage as you might think he might otherwise do with this ability in Hydra. So if this also did a enemy max HP hit and then did additional 5% for each buff removed, that would literally be all the buff I think this champion needs to suddenly be a grade A damage dealer in Hydra. And I think I would use this form over his other form, or maybe even kind of swap between the two of them because there's some interesting uses in both of them. Finally, he does increase his accuracy by 10% for each buff on each enemy. So again, if you don't need to build him with all the accuracy in the world, he'll get a little extra when the enemy has buffs. But again, in PvP, you're talking maybe 3 buffs per champion. So you're talking 120 extra accuracy. It's not a lot. So you're going to need a little bit of accuracy here. And then each critical hit inflicted by allies decreases turn meters of enemies by 5%. And that's definitely going to need some accuracy as well. So his second kit needs a bunch of accuracy. His first kit doesn't. That makes him kind of odd to build. So what I've done with him is I've got him in protection set. So let's just pull up his main stats here. So I've got him with a ton of HP, a ton of defense. I don't really care about the attack because he does damage based on defense in both forms, which is absolutely great. A very, very good amount of speed. This was somewhat incidental, but I definitely wanted him to be fast. The fact that I got him up to almost 300 speed was great. And to be fair, I've ascended a lot of his gear, so a lot of his gear is pretty late game. Got him some resistance. I didn't aim for resistance, but I didn't fight against resistance either, so that was good. I tried to get some accuracy. I really would like to put him in an accuracy banner, but I got him in 9-piece protection, which makes sense for the fact that I'm going to be using him with his first form in Hydra. So what'll happen with 9-piece protection is I get not only 75% chance of my protected buffs, but allies deal 5% more damage per buff placed by this wearer. And since he can place 4 or 5 buffs, that's up to 25% additional damage from all of my damage dealers just from him wearing protection set. And that was a little more important than getting the accuracy for his second form, in my opinion. And again, all I need to do is get a better banner. This banner's honestly not particularly good. Once I get a better banner, we'll be in good shape. And in fact, I can actually check, did I get a good banner recently? I have this, which is not as good. I don't need the extra resistance, so that's not going to be helpful. So this is how I've got him built. I've used him in PvP. He's actually okay in PvP. I certainly could use some more accuracy. I do think he needs to be manualed in PvP because I think you need to pick whether or not you want to go for all the buffs to keep everyone alive or you want to go the debuff route to prevent the attackers from actually attacking. Both can be very helpful. He's got a good fun kit. So let's go take him into Hydra first. Let me show you the team I've built him with Hydra. It's a team I had been playing with for a while. I swapped out one champion, and I was really happy with what it was running. So we'll go take a look at that team, show you what it's got built, and then I'll run the team and show you the results, and then we'll take him into PvP. All right, so I've got him in my Wixwell Brutal team. And this team is, I think, a great team for what Androc is great for. I do not have a reviver in this team outside of Ugo's weird passive ability that has a chance of allowing me to revive. And I basically am relying on Wixwell's shields and Androc's healing to keep everybody alive here. Ugo's got some healing and cleansing as well, so that's great. And overall, I am relying on those two to keep everyone alive. Ugo to kind of get all the debuffs out there, as well as Michinaki provides some debuffs in addition to Michinaki and Newt, and of course, Shamail here providing some damage. So Wixwell is set up to prioritize getting his shield out with the intercept out, and then getting the decrease attack hair out here. Oh, I need to finish booking that, so I will certainly do that before we get this run started. I don't have my Wixwell booked. Interesting. So I was running this and did pretty well without Wixwell being booked. So I didn't even know Wixwell was not booked. So I'm going to go book him before we make this run. But definitely books your Wixwell, folks. He's worth it. But the other thing I will do with this team is I will manual this team first to make sure that Wixwell's first turn, I get the provoke out on the Head of Decay. So apparently they need books in that as well. So again, I'm going to be diving into booking Wixwell. So amen to that. Getting those provokes out there means that generally that the head is going to constantly attack Wixwell, and he will counterattack, and then he will get that provoke out there, and he can generally lock down the Head of Decay by himself if you do that A1 to start with. Afterwards, eventually it can spread out a little bit. He may not always get that out there, but sometimes he will. It's overall a pretty good ability. And honestly, I found that even with the Cleansing Head was occasionally getting cleanses, it was still doing really, really good damage. Got Michinaki. Michinaki is a great damage dealer. If you leave him to himself, he will do this decrease attack and decrease defense. The decreased attack is only on champions under Hex, however, and we need to get the Hex out there first. Plus, this strips buffs, which is great in case somebody gets a buff out there, because occasionally the heads will put some buffs. You don't get all the Ugo stuff out there. So I like having some buff strip in my Hydra teams, and he does it while also doing a ton of damage. And then finally, he also gets these burns out there. Again, I would recommend booking this. Apparently, I've been short on books in this account or haven't paid attention, so I need to start getting some books in there. We're certainly going to focus on Wixwell and then see what we can get in Michinaki. And that will certainly help get some additional damage out there. Getting the burns out helps, adds a ton of additional damage because the burns do damage to all the heads. Michinaki's a great damage dealer overall. He's also built with high defense, high crit rate, good speed, good accuracy. We've got Ugo here. Ugo is generally left to her own devices. Ugo generally knows when to do this decreased defense and block buffs, but also knows when to heal and cleanse people as well. So I don't pre-program that. I find she just does a pretty good job of sorting it out by herself. She's built super fast. I don't have a lot of damage build on her. Obviously enough accuracy to land things, and then built really tanky. We've got Newt here. Newt, I want him to lead off with this decrease attack and weaken to get both the decrease attack and the weaken out there. The counterattack is kind of nice because he'll counterattack out there occasionally. And then finally, we're going to want him for his max HP hit. So this is going to do a lot of damage. But even his A1 does a lot of damage. He's built super fast. He's got a ton of crit damage. He's got enough accuracy to land what he wants. He's built for Fire Knight. But of course, in Hydra, he's going to be doing very well as well. We've already seen the Androc form build. As you can see, I've got a little bit of extra speed here in Hydra. I've got his Metamorph turned off. We are going to lead with this increase strengthen, increase resistance, and continuous heal. However, I'm actually not as focused on getting that out as much as I am on the Radiant Claw, because I want to extend all the buffs. But that has a lot to do with the fact that Wixwell is also extending buffs. Wixwell also has the shield he's putting out there. Plus, we have other buffs that randomly get out there as well. So having all of these buffs constantly extended, I think, will overall keep everybody alive just a little bit better. And then finally, if he's not doing anything else, he's going to do this, which will attack one enemy. But the increased defense will help with Michinaki and Newt do additional damage because they're both defense-based champions. Same with Wixwell, same with Androc. So finally, the only non-defense, non-support champion we've got is Shamail. Shamail's got some damage. He's built. He's ready to go. He'll keep the fears off of us. He'll provoke turn meter. He can do some buff stripping. He gives you all kinds of different flexibility that you can use, and gives additional damage. So I've got 3 damage dealers and 3 supports and no revive. So let's go run this through Hydra. And like I said, the only thing I do to set it up is I will make sure that Wixwell gets provoke out onto Decay first, and then I will set it on auto and let it run. All right, so here we are getting started. I'll just walk you through the start quickly. I did book Wixwell. I had 2 books left, and they both landed as A3, so we got his shields down on a 3-turn cooldown. I think that will be very, very helpful. I would have liked the buff extension, but we already have some buff extension, so that shouldn't be a problem. We get Androx, gets all the buffs out there as well. Wixwell will go attack, and we got the provokes out there. We're all set, and I can just do full auto from here. And Newt does his thing, gets the weakens out there. Ugin gets the decreased defenses out there. And we are good to go. And we've already got a bunch of protected buffs out there. And we've got the head provoked, and we're starting to do some damage. So let's watch how the damage rolls in. And I will come back to you once this run is done. All right, so about 22 minutes later, we have a 56 million damage Hydra Brutal team, which is some of the best results that I've had. Michinaki obviously did a bunch of damage. Some of that is obviously from his Hex. Newt definitely does a bunch of damage here. And obviously I could swap a couple damage dealers out here. So if I get somebody better than Michinaki or Newt, I could certainly swap them out. There's all kinds of options. Again, I haven't finished booking Wixwell. Michinaki could probably use a couple books as well. This team has plenty of room for improve. But I think Androc overall has certainly added a lot of damage. You can see he is responsible for a ton of healing. He actually did a decent amount of damage, not quite as much as anybody else other than Ugo. Wixwell gets the advantage of he's doing some counterattacking because he's always getting his counterattack up, so he's going to get a bunch of extra what's War Master out there, so that'll be very helpful for him. So let's go take a look at a couple of PvP fights in Arena, and I can kind of show you what I do with Androc. Again, I do think he's better off manual in the build that I have him right now, but we'll talk about him in Arena and go from there. All right, so here's a type of team that I think might do very well for using Androc. You've got a Skull Crown, and Androc's alternate form can place block buffs, so you can actually kill the Skull Crown without worrying about the unkillable being placed. You could certainly help counter a Valk by stripping the buffs and then placing block debuffs on there. You could certainly strip your Monkey King from doing some damage by making him a weak. And the Enfeeble Wit is definitely good. It also can help nerf a Torment kind of a little bit. Now, obviously, I've got Mezimel in this team as well. Mezimel is one of my better nukers. Mezimel can also do some of the block revives. And then Siphi is obviously going to be, depending on if you have him or not. We certainly have Armands is a recent fusion, so hopefully you've got our Armands. He gives you the speed lead from this as well. But basically, his job in the team is either going to be to protect you with a bunch of buffs and then add some additional damage with the way I've got him built with a 9-piece protection, or you're building him to debuff, which means you're either trying to get out Enfeeble or you're trying to get out block buffs out there before the other team. I don't think this is necessarily a strong suit, but it's certainly something we can do. So we're going to go in here and we're going to manual this auto fight. Manual this arena fight even. So want to boost our speed, and that'll protect against Torment. We are going to... All right, she's got Stone Skin. Let's get block debuffs out there so we don't get the block buffs, so we don't get any of the counterattacks going. If we get the stuns out, we're in great shape. Perfect. And we'll sheep you to get rid of that Stone Skin. Perfect. All right, so Mezimel, I can block the revive, but instead I'm going to power you up, transform into the AoE, and then we will nuke with the AOT. And preview to the Mezimel build. Mezimel is pretty amazing. We'll just hit for the Enfeeble because we can, and from here I should be able to full auto because we're just waiting for somebody to kill Torment and Monkey King as he revives. So there we go. Probably not the most dangerous team for the way I've got my team set up, but that's pretty much how Androc can work in Arena. I think he's got some good use. I think in a live arena, he could probably be a real big pain, because I think that Enfeeble is going to play off on a lot of people and really wreck some teams if they don't have cleanses. I think the block buffs is a great way to deal with Arena as well. The big problem he's going to run into is going to run into sheep problems, and you're going to have to build him with a lot of accuracy. If I was building him for Arena, I would probably build him in some pinpoint gear, now that we're farming pinpoint, get some of that intercept buff on him, or maybe just some feral to get some block debuffs up on him as well, but that's still not going to do everything. You really need the pinpoint to prevent sheep, and that will certainly help him out as well. Or you can certainly use him again as a healer and a protector, because Strengthen is a great buff to have. The continuous heals can be great, and if you've got him in a lot of protection, he can actually add for some damage. So overall, I think Androc is great. There's plenty of dungeons I think he could be usable in. He's probably not going to be in your speed farming dungeons, but he'll certainly help in some dungeons. I think he could be very useful against the Griffin, for example, in Doom Tower. He'll definitely help you in the Centranos waves, and maybe he needs a little bit of a buff to do just a little bit more damage. But I think overall he's a fun champion, and I'm enjoying him so far. So hopefully this helps. If you pull him, good luck to you. I think he's great. I think he'll help you a ton. And I think if my account advances a little bit more, I think he could be a single protector in a Hydra team, so I could get even more damage in there as my account develops. So Looking forward to that. Hopefully this has been helpful. Until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.